My wealthy sister offered to pay my debts if I was her surrogate, but when her husband demanded natural conception, I cut them off and fled forever. My name is Anna, I'm 27 years old and I feel like I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Or perhaps I'm ready to make another one by withdrawing. It involves my older sister, Elisa, and her husband, Mark. They are both in their late 30s, possibly closer to 40 now. Elisa has always wanted a large family. She has always been the mom with around 10 dolls lined up when we were youngsters playing house. It wasn't only a childhood issue, it became her biggest dream. But life threw her a huge curveball. She suffered for years from what doctors initially misdiagnosed as severe endometriosis, but subsequently discovered to be severe polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, with numerous problems. She underwent numerous therapies and endured a great deal of agony. I can't count how many times I've seen her cry out of irritation or physical pain. Things deteriorated to the point where she needed a hysterectomy a few years back. It crushed her. It felt like the final door had slammed shut on her dream of having her own kid. But Elisa and Mark are fighters. They have plenty of affection to give. They began fostering children that needed a safe environment. They've welcomed 5 different youngsters into their house over the years, some for a short period of time and others for much longer. Then they adopted 2 adorable youngsters, brothers with autism. They are truly excellent parents, patient, caring, and involved. Their house is chaotic at times, but it is also filled with warmth and structure. They're also doing quite well financially. Mark has a well-paying IT career, while Elisa works part-time as a consultant from home. They have a large, pleasant home in a nice suburb, the entire picture. So, you would think they'd be satisfied, right? They have this lovely family that they created. However, about 7 months ago, this new concept began. Mark brought it up first, almost of casually. Then Elisa was very into it too. They began discussing about wanting a child who was biologically linked to them. It seemed strange to me, given that they already have sons, but they explained that they wanted the experience of raising a baby from day one, knowing its entire genetic history, a chance, in their words, to do everything right from the start and provide the absolute best foundation possible. It felt like they thought their adopted sons were missing out on something, which bothered me. But I didn't say anything then. They regard it as a different but equally valid way to expand their family. Then came the big request. They invited me to sit with them one evening. The kids were sleeping, the home was peaceful, and they simply lay everything out. They asked whether I would be their typical surrogate, which meant my egg and Mark's sperm. They knew I was young, healthy, and closely linked. They had everything arranged financially. They would cover every single expense, including lawyers to design the arrangement, all medical costs, prenatal care, delivery, and everything else. Therapy for me if necessary, maternity clothes, you name it. On top of that, they offered me a life-changing package. They would pay off my entire student loan debt, which is embarrassingly large, rent me a nice 2-bedroom apartment for 3 years so I wouldn't have to worry about housing, and give me a lump sum of cash that would probably total close to $300,000. My first reaction was shock. But suddenly my mind began racing. I work a fairly ordinary office job, just making ends meet after rent and loan payments. This offer was more than just money, it was freedom. It served as the foundation for the rest of my life. I spent 9, maybe 12 months of my life carrying a kid for my sister, who urgently wants one, in exchange for years of financial security. It seemed almost too good to be true. I thought about it for a week. I spoke to my parents. They were ecstatic. "What a wonderful gift, Anna," my mother replied. "Family helps family, and think about what they're offering." My father agreed, stating it was a realistic approach to aid Elisa and Mark while also securing my own future. Our entire extended family, very close and part of a conservative religious group where family and sacrifice are really important, thought it was a lovely, beautiful notion. Aunt Zoe even called me teary-eyed, stating she was proud of my kindness. So with everyone cheering me on and dollar signs flashing in my mind, I said yes. I had a clear picture of it. Regular visits to a spotless, sterile reproductive clinic. Mark would supply a sample. The physicians would do their thing. Maybe some hormonal injections for me. Then a simple insemination method, such as IUI, intrauterine insemination. Clinical, medical, and impersonal. That is what I signed up for in my thinking. I could manage it. It would be a profession, one that was both personal and physically demanding, but still doable. Then came the conversation, which completely threw me off guard. Elisa called me a few weeks after we agreed, sounding slightly uneasy. She asked if I could come over for supper with the 3 of us again. I went expecting they might want to talk about timelines or lawyer stuff. We were eating dessert when Mark cleared his throat and explained that they had been doing a lot of thinking and study. He said that they hope to conceive naturally, through intercourse. I think I just stared at them, fork halfway in my mouth. What are their reasons? 1. It was absolutely free, saving them clinic fees that they could use for the baby fund or my remuneration. I was unsure. 2. Despite the fact that things had improved significantly, they were still concerned about hospitals and clinics due to ongoing pandemic worries. They enjoyed the concept of storing things at home. 3. And this was the strangest part. Mark had reportedly read some articles online and became convinced that spontaneously conceived infants were healthier, and that the pregnancy itself would be safer with no artificial processes or chemicals involved. Elisa nodded, noting that it felt more linked and organic this way. I quickly felt nauseous. The ick factor, as I named it in my thoughts, was overwhelming. It wasn't Mark. He's my brother-in-law. I've known him for years, and he's wonderful. But sleeping with him frequently for the aim of conception seemed wrong on so many levels. It felt like it had passed the line from surrogacy into something quite else, something nasty and extremely uncomfortable. Why couldn't they simply use a syringe? Seriously, if they wanted to save money, they could do it at home instead of going to the clinic. They could get a sterilized needleless syringe from the pharmacist. It would still be my egg and his sperm, but without the actual contact that made my skin crawl. I attempted to convey it politely. I proposed the syringe idea. Mark instantly turned it off. He described it as cold and clinical, which is exactly what they wanted to avoid. He went on to discuss how the natural act provided more positive energy for conception. Elisa just sat there, pleading with me, saying she trusted Mark's studies and hoped I could see their point of view, which was all about giving the baby the greatest possible start. Now I'm trapped. I gave my word. My family is already celebrating, practically knitting booties. Elisa is my sister, and I adore her. I understand how much this means to her. And God, the money. Giving it up feels ridiculous, especially given inflation and the high cost of everything. Financial independence is staring me in the face. But the prospect of implementing this version of the plan makes me physically nauseous. Is it odd for me to want to back out now? Is their request reasonable, and am I simply being immature or squeamish? My parents, when I slightly hinted at my discomfort without going into detail, I was too ashamed, simply blew it off, saying things like, "It's just a means to an end, dear. And don't overthink the mechanics." They don't see the big problem. Am I insane for ever considering walking away from $300,000 and shattering my sister's heart? Is it insane of me to consent to this in the first place? Okay, I'll edit. Wow. Reading the few comments that arrived nearly immediately, something clicked. I'm so out of my depth here that it's not even funny. This isn't just about the nick factor, this is about limits, ethics, potential coercion, and my personal well-being. Thank you. I need to figure out how to contact Elisa and Mark. I'll absolutely tell them about the initial idea. Intercourse is a non-starter. I need to discuss alternatives. If they truly desire a biological connection through Mark, they may consider using a gestational surrogate, or they could simply accept that this particular avenue will not work. Right now, the prospect of me carrying the baby feels contaminated and complex. This conversation is going to be terrible. I'm not looking forward to it one bit. Update 1. Things went from tricky to a total trash fire. After that first post, I started reading more and more about surrogacy, not the shiny agency websites, but actual forums, personal blogs, and news pieces about failed surrogacy trips, and I fell down a deep, dark rabbit hole. The comments on my post were only the beginning. I spent hours reading about the physical realities, traumatic births, unexpected C-sections, permanent body changes like incontinence or prolapse, postpartum depression that hits surrogates hard, the feeling of detachment, or conversely, the intense struggle of giving up a baby you carried for 9 months, and the legal and emotional horror stories, contracts being ignored, intended parents making unreasonable demands during the pregnancy, changing their minds, surrogates leaving. That was terrifying. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm way too young, way too innocent, and frankly, way too unprepared for this. It wasn't only about the method of conception anymore. It was the what if of everything else. What if I experienced major complications? What if I couldn't emotionally handle giving up the baby? What if Elisa, Mark, and I had a significant fight during our pregnancy? What if their perfect start ideas morphed into control over my nutrition, activities, and life? I realized I wasn't only trying to avoid the intercourse portion. I did not want to be pregnant. Not for them, maybe never. After reading all of those stories about 3rd and 4th degree tearing, and the sheer unpredictability of childbirth, I was terrified. I'm simply not prepared for that kind of risk and responsibility, especially for someone else's child, even if that person is my sister. Telling Elisa was one of the most difficult things I'd ever had to do. I practiced it in my head 120 times. Everything in our family, upbringing and religious community emphasizes sacrifice, family support, and putting others first. Saying no seemed like a betrayal of everything, as well as of Elisa, whom I genuinely care about. I finally called her. I kept things brief and simple. I apologized and told her that I couldn't proceed with the surrogacy in any manner. I told her that it didn't mean I didn't love her anymore, but that I just wasn't the proper person for this. She remained quiet for a long time. Then she simply stated softly that she was extremely sad, but she respected my decision. She sounded heartbroken but resigned. I felt terrible, but also relieved. I thought, okay, that was terrible, but it's done. I was mistaken. A few evenings later, my phone vibrated with a Zoom call invitation. It was Elisa and Mark. My stomach sank. I accepted, but soon regretted it. Elisa appeared on TV, tears running down her cheeks. Mark sat next to her, seeming gloomy. She spoke first, her voice full of emotion, telling me how much they had hoped for this, how they had already begun fantasizing about their biological kid, and how this was their final opportunity. She implored me to reconsider, saying that perhaps we could work out a compromise. Then Mark interjected. His tone was not imploring, it was strong and almost accusing. He told me that they were quite disappointed in me. He stated they had depending on me, and that family should be dependable. He expressed hope that I would be able to follow through on my commitment. When I tried to express my anxieties, my research, my sentiments about the hazards, and the severity of the situation, he dismissed it all. He launched into a sermon about how pregnancy and childbirth are the most natural and beautiful procedures in the world, how women's bodies were literally designed for this, and how I should not let fear prevent me from fulfilling this sacred calling for my family. He made it sound like my anxieties were ridiculous, irrational, and that I was defective for not accepting this gift. Hearing him remark that I was made for this after everything I'd read and felt sparked something in me. It felt dismissive, patronizing, and quite manipulative. I'm glad it was a video call. I'm not sure what I would have done in person. I just mumbled something about a terrible connection, froze my video feed, and hung up. My heart pounded. Then the text began. Elisa sent a pleading text. Please, Anna. Think about it more. Mark sends guilt-tripping texts. You're really letting down your sister. Think about what you're tossing out. I had been ignoring them. I'm not sure what more to say. How do you reply to that? One thing is clear. Backing out was the right decision. Their reaction just proved it. Thank you again to everyone who left their initial comments. You might have spared me from a far greater calamity than I could have predicted. Update 2. It is late. My flight leaves in a few hours, and I'm sitting on the floor of my mostly empty apartment, too energized to sleep. I'm moving across the nation, and I doubt I'll be returning. Not for a very long time. I intend to gradually and silently lose contact with my family, community, and all I've ever known. It sounds drastic, and a part of me is already grieving since I love them, but I don't see any other path forward. Following that Zoom call, things worsened. The pressure did not subside. My parents intervened, gently at first, then more insistently, asking me to restore fences and contemplate aiding Elisa. They certainly didn't get the whole picture. I was too ashamed and conflicted to inform them about the intercourse demand at first. Then, in May, a family gathering was held at Elisa and Mark's house to celebrate one of the boys' birthdays. I felt forced to go in order to appear normal, and possibly to see the children I adore. This was a mistake. Elisa and Mark cornered me in their kitchen near the conclusion of the party, when most of the people had left. They asked again if I would reconsider. Elisa began crying, describing her empty arms and how seeing other newborns physically hurt her. Mark stood close by, almost towering. He spoke about legacy, the value of blood ties, and how this child would complete his family in ways that the adopted boys, as great as they were, could not. It seemed like they were tagging me. Mark then went closer, but Elisa looked away and wiped her eyes. He placed his hand on my arm, and then my waist. He began whispering about how much they needed me, how beautiful I was, and how this could be a shared intimacy with a great purpose. Then he leaned in and began kissing me, not just a peck, but a kiss. His other hand began caressing my side and creeping near my breast. I just froze, completely frozen. Typing this makes me feel really dumb and weak. Why did not I push him away? Why didn't I scream? But I couldn't react in that time since Elisa was crying close, Mark was so physically present and intense, and I was shocked and confused. It seemed weird and terrible. My mind became blank. Fortunately, it did not proceed further. One of the children yelled out from another room, shattering the trance. Mark drew back, appearing flustered for a moment. I murmured an explanation about having to leave, grabbed my bag, and virtually rushed out of there. I drove home, shivering, replaying it in my thoughts, disgusted with him and Elisa for allowing this to happen. Did she know? How could she not? And ultimately, I blame myself for freezing. After that, I realized I couldn't stay. I tried to talk to my parents again, implying that Mark had been improper and that the strain was hard. They became uneasy, exchanged glances, and basically told me I must have misunderstood, that Mark was a fine man, and that I was being excessively sensitive because I was anxious. My mother advised I pray about it. I even tried to speak with our religious leader, Father Laurent. He listened calmly before discussing the necessity of forgiveness, family togetherness, and respecting Elisa and Mark's grief. He hinted that my surrogacy sacrifice could lead to healing for everyone. No criticism of Mark, no support for my boundary, only platitudes and pressure to conform. That was the last straw. I already felt like an outlier in many ways, single, focused on my job in a neighborhood where most women my age were married with children, and not as religious as expected. However, the lack of support, collective denial, and pressure caused something to break. Everyone I trusted assaulted and manipulated me, dismissing my sentiments. It helped me see the entire system in a new way. Working from home during the pandemic had already given me time to reflect and reassess things I had previously accepted. Following the incident and the conversation with Father Laurent, I began conducting extensive research online. I discovered communities of people who had abandoned our particular church, individuals who have rebuilt their life outside of high-demand groups. Their stories of achieving independence, liberty, and happiness were incredibly moving. I wanted it. I needed it. So, for the past 3 months, I've covertly planned my departure. I found a job with my employer in a city thousands of miles away. I scheduled the move, found an apartment online, sold or gave the majority of my belongings, and packed the necessities. I told my family that I had a fantastic career opportunity that I couldn't pass up. They were astonished at the distance but appeared to accept it. Probably relieved that geography has resolved the surrogacy issue. Attending the large Community Pioneer Day event last month was excruciating. Pretending everything was fine, making small talk, ignoring Elisa and Mark's hard stares, and hugging my parents farewell, knowing it could be the final time for a long time. It was extremely difficult, but I finished it for myself and to bring that chapter to a close. So here I am, waiting for daybreak and my trip to a new life. I feel afraid, eager, and heartbroken all at once. I know it will be difficult to start a new life alone for the first time. But I also realize I can't go back. Thank you, strangers on the internet, for being the first to tell me I wasn't insane. You have no idea how much difference it made. Stay safe. Update 3. It's hard to realize, but my 1-year anniversary of leaving is almost approaching. I logged back into this old account, mainly for myself, as a time capsule entry to look back on someday. It's a beautiful, sunny morning in my new city. Birds are chirping outside my window. I have a good cup of coffee. And for the first time in what seems like forever, there is a sense of calm. Real peace. Not the peaceful tension I used to experience, but actual tranquility. This past year has been a blur. It was difficult to start over at the age of 27. There were lonely days, moments of doubt, periods when I missed the familiar, and even places I ran away from. Making new acquaintances requires time, navigating a new city, a new social environment, and figuring out who I am without the titles that defined my previous life: daughter, sister, community member. It's been a process, but it's been my own. I enjoy my job here. I've met some extremely interesting folks outside of my usual circles. I've tried new activities and explored new places. I've spent a lot of time in therapy, digesting what happened, learning about boundaries, and processing my loss and anger. I've learned that it's okay to prioritize myself. My contact with my family has become minimal, virtually non-existent. There were a few awkward texts on birthdays and holidays, but that was it. It hurts occasionally, like a dull ache. I miss the concept of them, the family I believed I had. But then I remember the pressure, manipulation, violation, and lack of support, and I know I made the best decision for my health. I'm not sure what the future holds. Maybe eventually there will be reconciliation, but I'm not holding my breath. Right now, I'm focused on living my life on my own terms. And today, feeling the sun on my face, I am filled with gratitude. Grateful for the opportunity to start over. Grateful for the strength I discovered that I did not realize I have. I'm grateful for this quiet, ordinary, serene morning. Here's to our first year of independence, and hopefully many more to follow. And now for story 2. My girlfriend cheated on me, so when she tried to come back, I played her game and won. So, I met Leah through a common acquaintance, and while I liked her at first, I didn't expect to be in a relationship with her. We were only buddies. A month later, we attended a party at a friend's house. The party was fine, but after a time we became bored and decided to relax on the couch. After a time, 2 of our companions left to buy more drinks, leaving me and Leah alone. We didn't take long to start making out. I am not sure what happened next, but I awoke with her in my arms. We decided it was just buddies having fun and continued as we had till then. Now, let's move off topic for a second. I reside on an island with several tiny villages dotted throughout it. Leah resides in a town about 20 minutes from mine, and I went there frequently because my grandmother lives there. I see my grandmother almost every weekend, so Leah and I were seeing each other more frequently. We usually went out with a small group of friends, but one day Leah and I found ourselves alone again. We made out again. This continued for almost a month after the home party, and we would periodically question, what exactly are we? We considered starting a relationship, but we put it off until one day she asked for a direct response. Long story short, we decided to enter into a relationship. Our chemistry was excellent for the first few months, but there was a problem. We couldn't see each other as often once school started, so our relationship was largely long distance. Regardless, everything was running nicely. But then I saw she was growing increasingly distant. She didn't respond to texts as quickly and wasn't as invested in herself as she had been. Then New Year's arrived. She stated that she had made plans with her girls to celebrate together. I didn't think much of it, but when I asked her about the party, her responses made me doubt the authenticity of our connection. However, I didn't think much of it. We continued to date until the beginning of February, when she unexpectedly called and told me she wanted to end the relationship. The reason? She didn't like the distance between us, but she wanted to stay friends. We did what she said, but the rationale seemed quite odd to me. We were still in touch, but not as frequently as before. Then a friend, let's call her Mary, who was with her at the New Year's party, told me she had cheated on me that evening. I didn't trust her until she showed me photographs. My suspicions were validated, but I did not confront her about them. Fast forward to early August, when Leah was celebrating her birthday at a nightclub. She did not invite me, but I found myself there regardless. I saw her and we spoke. One thing led to another, and we went out again. When Leah told me how much she missed me, I knew just what to do. I made an extra effort to see her during the month, giving her everything I had and more. Leah wanted to restart their relationship, but I refused. This went on until November, and it's safe to say she was obsessed about me. Then I unveiled my strategy. I entirely cut off communication with her. She went nuts. She came to me in person and demanded an explanation. I just showed her a photograph of her with another man. She eventually realized her error. Leah attempted to apologize, but I did not listen. I was finally at peace, but she refused to give up. She contacted me using a friend's phone, and the tantrum that ensued was spectacular. Leah went nuclear on me, first blaming me, then apologizing, and then manipulating the issue by claiming it was my fault she cheated, all while having a mental breakdown. Once again, I did not say much. I just told her that she was facing the repercussions of her behavior, and that we were done for good. I banned that number as well, and she hasn't tried to contact me since.